we have so many forces trying to grab our attention at every second of the day. Yeah. So if you think about your own life and social media, your access to entertainment, and the amount of information you have constantly at your disposal.
And it makes it so hard to focus because we're split so many ways. There are a lot of these little things that we can implement to improve our focus and to help reduce that stress and those negative impacts of distraction that can come up. The information in this podcast is for general, informational, and educational purposes only. This podcast is not a substitute for personal mental health care or therapy with a qualified practitioner. If anything you hear brings up concerns for you, we strongly encourage you to speak with your GP, psychologist, or another qualified health professional.
We would like to acknowledge and pay our respects to the traditional owners of the unceded lands of the Kulin Nation, on which this podcast is recorded. We acknowledge their rich history and honour the ongoing connection to land, waters, culture, and community.
Hello and welcome to This Might Help, a podcast bridging the gap between evidence-based psychology research and your everyday life.
We're your hosts, Dr. Kira Hart.
And I'm Dr. Lauren Rossetti, and we are two Australian psychologists.
Today we're talking about all things focus and distraction. So why is it harder than ever to pay attention, and what can help us with focus? But before we get into today's chat, let's kick us off as always with our wellbeing wins and wobbles for the week. Lauren, what's been your wellbeing win and wobble?
Okay, my wellbeing win is a guilty pleasure show that I'm loving. So it is The Summer I Turned Pretty.
Yes, it's so good.
Okay, now I've been watching it lots.
Yeah.
And yeah, if anyone is familiar with the new season,
Yes.
I'm in the thick of it. And this is a wellbeing win because it's like a distraction, it's entertaining, it's like a little bit of like trashy romance, watching content that I love. But it's a little bit of a wobble also because if anyone is up to date, if anyone feels me on this love triangle situation that we are being put through, the torture of it is a bit of a wellbeing wobble. So it's a love-hate relationship.
And what brother are you rooting for?
Oh, I feel like we're going to get haters. No, I'm Team Conrad. I hope that whisper got into the audio. So that's my wellbeing win. I am living it up with some trashy guilty pleasure TV time.
Yeah.
And then my wellbeing wobble is very recent. This morning, I set off the fire alarm or the smoke alarm in the kitchen when I was making just some eggs for breakfast.
Oh no.
Yes, and
Poached, scrambled, fried.
Just fried eggs. I don't know the relevance of the egg type, but
I don't know, maybe I thought that might have effect like the smoke or I don't know.
We've got new stainless steel pans, getting used to them. Anyway, that's so boring. But the fact of the matter is I set off the smoke alarm and that sent my heart rate through the roof. It was a very stressful time and I feel like my nervous system is still on a come down from being so alert from like the fear and you're shaking the kitchen tea towel over the thing,
opening the windows.
It was very dramatic.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's where you find me today, post fire alarm set off nervous system shock.
Yes, what a wobble.
Yeah. How about your win and wobble?
My wellbeing win of the week. I feel like I say this often, but I feel like I had so many wellbeing wins.
Yeah, we've had a chat about this and it's great for you, but it's giving me a reality check.
How I always come with like a million wins and no wobbles. But my wellbeing win of this week has just been the coziness, I feel like I'm very much a winter person.
Yeah.
And I've had the most divine week, just like rugging up in my dressing gown, walking around in my Ugg boots, sipping on tea. And I've gotten really into Ovaltinis this week. And I've just been in like this little cozy sanctuary in my house. And I love that for me. It's just been a really beautiful, cozy week. So that's been my well-being win.
Fabulous.
And then my well-being wobble actually relates to today's topic, which is attention or difficulty with focus and distractions.
Yeah.
So I got home from work on Thursday and I'd half meal prepped a meal the night before. So I had a few vegetables and protein in my fridge and I had the intention of cooking them Thursday night. But I really was feeling like I was craving olive bread. So I walked to Coles and bought myself a loaf of olive bread. I know this is maybe a bit boring for the listeners, but it's leading to my wobble. Got home, had like some olive bread and dip for dinner, but I ran out. In my house, we have a shack, like an outhouse, which is where our air fryer is.
Okay.
So a lot of detail.
Is this going somewhere?
It is going somewhere, I promise. So in my head, I was like, I won't have the vegetables and protein for dinner. I'll have my olive bread, but I'll pop it in the air fryer, meal prep, and I'll have it for lunch tomorrow and for dinner tomorrow. Anyway, did that, went back inside, had my olive bread for dinner, had just a delightful night in my cozy house with my housemates, woke up the next morning. Woke up the next morning to like pack my lunchbox for work. And I was like, oh yeah, I'll get like the veggies and chicken from the fridge. Realized that I'd left it in the air fryer the night before. So I completely forgot what I was doing the previous night. My attention was out the window. I was not focused and I had to chuck my chicken and vegetables in the bin because I wasn't going to eat that the day after it'd been sitting in an air fryer all night.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. So
that's definitely a wobble.
That was my wellbeing wobble, but very topical for today's episode, which is attention. So in today's episode, we'll be chatting about what is happening when we are focused versus when we're distracted and why we're struggling more than ever with our attention and remaining focused. And also what actually helps us to stay focused and how can we do this in our everyday lives.
Yeah. And I think it's important to also touch on the fact that we're talking about attention and focus and distraction. And we're really in this episode touching on those everyday attention, focus, distraction symptoms that we all feel and how people are experiencing kind of poorer focus over time. So we're noticing that that's happening. We're not focusing in this episode on a diagnosis of attention. So we're not focusing on ADHD, which is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, but we might focus on that in another episode. This chat today is really about those broad focus, distraction, attention symptoms in our everyday life.
Yeah. Exactly. So let's start with foundations. Tell me about attention and focus.
There is lots of things going on with attention and focus. When we focus, we're really locking in our attention on one thing. So we're focused on the one task and we're limiting other distractions. But there are many models or theories of attention and focus that exist. There's no absolute conclusion in like the research about what the ultimate attention model or theory is.
Yeah.
But what we do know is that we are constantly taking in stimuli from our environments through our senses. So like you're constantly being exposed to sound and sight and smell and touch and all of these things. That information is all coming into our brains and our brain is filtering out a lot of this information so that we're just focusing on what is important. So for example, like in this conversation, you're hearing me talk, you're seeing me, but there's also like all of these other things in our environment. There's like birds outside and there's like sounds coming through the wall. Like there's just stuff everywhere, right?
Yes.
And there's like all of these visual things to focus on. But your brain, Kira, is telling you to what to focus on.
Pay attention to learn. That is exactly what I was thinking.
But it's helping you filter out any random things that aren't relevant to the situation. So that's our brain, I guess, controlling our attention, because every time we go anywhere, there is just like so much stuff around us that our brain is exposed to, and it does a very good job at giving us the information that we need for the moment, and not showing us the things that we don't need to pay attention to. You can think of this as well if you're in a room with lots of friends or lots of people. Let's say you're at a party or an event and you're chatting with your friends. Your brain will be filtering out the conversations from other people all around you, so that you can hear what your friends are saying to you rather than hearing the 7 other conversations in the room. But we also might find we get distracted by something interesting. So like you might pick up a word in another conversation that your brain's a bit interested in, and then you'll start hearing their conversation and you'll stop hearing what your friend's saying, or I don't know, you might see something interesting across the room and then you start getting distracted.
A little bit of eavesdropping.
Yes, absolutely. And so it's not a perfect system, but our brain does filter that information so we can focus on what is important.
Yeah.
There is a video of this that is a really good example. Have you seen, and I know you have, because we're both psychologists, and this is like, I feel like it's a pivotal element of our psychology training.
You watch it if you do psychology at school in like the units year 11 and year 12 psychology curriculum.
Yes, I forgot.
Early university psychology curriculum as well.
You've probably seen it 50 times then.
It's a great video though. Love it.
So we should provide some context probably. This is a video where it's called the selective attention test, and it's a video of people in a room and you're asked to count how many times the basketball is passed between these people. So they're throwing a basketball person to person throughout the room.
Yeah.
And your job when you start watching the video is count how many times it's passed around. And then at the end, it asks you, did you see the gorilla walking through the middle of the room? And you realize, no, you didn't see the gorilla at all, because your brain was focused on counting how many times the basketball was passed around the room. And so you completely miss, there is like this person dressed up in a big gorilla suit and they're walking right through the middle of the game, and you don't have, it's so crazy. Because you have no idea they were there.
When you rewatch the video, you're like, how did I miss this? But you're paying so much attention to that basketball being thrown around and counting that you miss it.
Yeah, like you do not see it at all. I find it astonishing. Yeah, that is a great example of our brain filtering out other information that we don't need in the moment so that we can focus on something that is important. Yeah, so that's our brain working. And there are multiple systems in our brain which work to help us do this job of focusing and paying attention. And there's one framework of this, like I mentioned earlier, there's many, many frameworks, but one of them is Posner's model. And this has 3 networks of attention in the brain. So the first one of these is the alerting network, and this is what just essentially keeps your attention systems switched on. So this makes you kind of awake and ready to respond to something. It's just like turning on your attention. Yeah. Then there's the orienting network, and this points your attention to where it needs to go. So for example, in that video, it's pointing your attention to be watching the basketball go from hand to hand. Yeah. So it's selecting the information in your environment that your brain needs to focus on. So that's the orienting network. And then there's the executive network. This is like the top level of attention. So this is when our brain is resolving the conflicts or making decisions about what to focus on. So you're doing all of that high level decision making about like, do you focus on this thing or that thing? Is this important or is that important in the moment? It's also not just what your brain is taking in from the environment around you, but also decisions around which thoughts you focus on, which feelings you focus on, which emotions you focus on.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's not just decisions about okay, I'm going to look at the people passing the basketball from hand to hand, but it's also, okay, are you having these like thoughts pop into your head that are distracting you? And it's making those decisions around what to focus on. So we've got an alerting network, which turns our attention system on, an orienting network system, which tells our brain, or is our brain telling us what we need to pay attention to at the time, and then an executive network, which is doing all that decision making about what we pay attention to and when we switch our attention and things like that. So lots of systems in the brain that control our attention and focus.
Interesting. I think another important thing to touch on is that our attentions aren't infinite. Like we all have difficulty with paying attention 24/7, and our brain does need breaks. Like it's impossible to stay attention or like stay on a task forever. After a certain amount of time, our brains need a break. We need to switch off. We need to distract ourselves and rest and relax before we can put more effort and pay attention to something new. So this is why brain breaks are so important. And when we say brain breaks, we mean time when we're not taking on overloading information. So maybe we're switched off from technology, or maybe we're not consuming content. Maybe it's just us and our thoughts. And I know we've had a chat before starting this podcast recording today that that's such a rarity in modern life, just to be like alone with your thoughts, because there is so much to consume and so much to be connected with. But having a break from technology and stimulus and just being with your thoughts is important.
Yes. And we don't have this endless amount of attention. Like it's not a limitless resource. It's definitely limited. And it makes me think of when, you know, you've had this super overwhelming day, or you've just been doing so many things. You like your work day has been stressful, and then you find yourself driving home in the car in complete silence. Like you realize after, I don't know, a 30-minute drive, oh, I did that drive. There was no music. There was nothing playing. There was no phone calls. It's just like you're holding the steering wheel and it's complete silence. And that's like, that just makes me think of you are, sitting there and your brain needs a brain break, and you have all this attention all day and it needs a reset. It's a rest.
I'm using this and running with it as my excuse for why I left my entire dinner in the air fryer overnight, because I had such a stimulating day at work where I was on paying attention and like attending to all my tasks.
Your attention taps were dry.
They were dry. I got home and I totally forgot about my dinner that was cooking. Thank goodness it turned off after 20 minutes and didn't burn the house down. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So it's like our brains have capacity for attention.
Yes, they do. And this is not just an individual problem in that we're feeling our attention is getting trickier. Like I feel personally as well that as years have gone on, my attention is harder, like it's harder to focus, right? And I get more distracted. This is not just an individual problem.
Thank goodness it's not just me.
And I'm just, not just you and your air fryer. People are feeling their focus and attention getting worse and worse, and that's reflected in the research. So there is a researcher called Professor Gloria Mark, who's from the University of California, Irvine, and they have done a lot of work in this space. They have a book called Attention Span, and there's a podcast episode we'll link in the show notes as well, where they are talking about a lot of the things that we're going to touch on a little bit further in this episode too. She's got some super excellent research. One of these bits of research that is discussed is about how our attention span has dropped over the years. So that attention span is how much time we can focus on a task. So like how long we focus on something. And they looked at our attention span in 2004, and it was an average of 2.5 minutes.
Okay.
So that
Yeah.
is the time. Essentially, this 2.5 minutes is what they looked at was if somebody gets up a document of work on their computer. So like you open up something, you open up a task and you start it. The average time that you would stay focused on that task is 2.5 minutes before switching away to something else, like an email, picking up your phone, chatting to someone. So
Yep.
that time still sounds very short, right? Like
Yeah.
2.5
2.5 minutes. Not long.
However, that was 2.5 minutes in 2004.
Yeah.
In more recent years, that's dropped to an average of 47 seconds.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
our attention span average, if you're opening something at work, that has dropped, that's more than half, like down to 47 seconds
Yeah.
on an activity. And so we're seeing attention is getting poorer, or our ability to focus and that attention span is getting shorter
Yeah.
over time. But why is that the case? Why are we getting more distracted and finding it harder to focus?
Yeah, I think it's due to the society we find ourselves in nowadays, that being the attention economy. And when I say attention economy, I mean we have so many forces trying to grab our attention at every second of the day. So if you think about your own life and social media and your access to entertainment and the amount of information you have constantly at your disposal.
Yeah.
That's what I mean by the attention economy trying to grab your attention. And this has been a concept that gained popularity in like the late 1990s, early 2000s as the internet boomed.
Yeah.
And that's only escalated over recent years. So whenever we jump on our laptops, we have emails, we have an endless scroll of social media, and we have so much content trying to grab our attention,
Yes.
making it therefore so much harder to actually pay attention to other activities like work activities.
Yeah. Yeah. I like the economist and psychologist Herbert Simon quote that's come up with this concept in the 1970s, saying that a wealth of information creates a poverty of attention.
Yes.
Like exactly like you've said, there's just all of this information, all of this stuff coming at us all of the time.
Yes.
And it makes it so hard to focus because we're split so many ways.
Exactly. And nowadays, what we pay attention to is really profitable. Like there's entire industries like Facebook ads that are set up and monetized to grab our attention and to distract us from scrolling through our friends' status updates or whatever you do on Facebook nowadays. I'm not sure. But we're not just working against ourselves and our own brains. It's like we're working against Mark Zuckerberg and all the tech guys at Facebook who are also trying to grab our attention through these ads and through making the platforms as like entertaining and as attention grabbing as they possibly can be. Another thing that's changed a lot over time is the nature of work.
Yeah.
And obviously I wasn't around 30 years ago or I wasn't working in office job 30 years ago, but anecdotally it's kind of like office jobs in the 80s, 90s, maybe you were a typewriter or maybe you had one specific task where your duties for the day were data entry.
Yeah.
Whereas nowadays an office job looks like emails coming through your inbox every 5 minutes, Zoom calls, team messages, like an endless array of information kind of coming at you on top of your required tasks.
Yeah.
So
and on top of personal text and social media and all of these other things that are not even related to work.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
the palm of your hand.
If you have your like iPhone or phone sitting next to you on your desk, exactly, you've all of that information coming at you as well.
Yeah, and we have it all linked. It's not even just having your phone there. It's that, even like Apple and Google, I'm sure, has the same thing, but it's
Yeah.
like all interconnected where I can see all of that on my computer. I
Yes.
can get my texts and calls on your computer. We have like, people also have like smartwatches and you get it on there. Anyway,
Yes.
just coming from every angle. We're under attack.
It is, but
I'm
it's
under attack.
it is. So it's like the nature of our work has changed as well.
Yes. The time to refocus after our attention is distracted is huge. So if you get distracted by one thing at work, so if you, pick up your phone or you check an email, the time that you're away from the task that you were doing can actually be over 20 minutes on average.
What?
Yeah. And it doesn't feel like that in the moment, but I would encourage myself and listeners alike
And me,
you,
yes.
to actually have a think about this next time. And it's probably better when you got distracted, you didn't realize, but when you come to the task to think about it and look at the time, because you will, and we all will, go to an email will pop up. Maybe you're working on something, you're writing notes, you're writing a paper, you're doing some task, and then you get an email and you click on it. And then if you've gone into your emails, you might be there for like on an average of around 20 minutes before you actually make it back to your task.
Yeah.
And it's those constant interruptions that happen all through the day that reduce our focus, like our focus time on one task.
Yes. I know I'm guilty of this. The other week on the podcast, I was speaking about how I've recently cleared my inbox. Like my email inbox only has like 3 emails sitting in it currently. But it took me a while to do that because there were days where I set out to do it and delete like 3,000 emails. And then I found myself on a Zara website looking at jeans when I was like, my goal for today was to clear my inbox. And now I'm distracted for 10, 20 minutes online shopping. Like, how did I get here?
Yes, exactly. And this in today's working life is also way more prevalent. So it's really uncommon for us to have uninterrupted time. Like an uninterrupted hour in the workday is now really uncommon.
Yeah.
Either you're getting an email, you're getting a call, someone's popping by and distracting you, but it's now so uncommon to have an uninterrupted hour. But it often takes us a bit of time to get into and focused on an activity. And so that time is actually really important to have like uninterrupted time.
Yeah.
Now, when we get distracted and we find ourselves off in an activity. So for example, if I've clicked on the email or, we've clicked on the email, we've gone to the Zara website. Yeah. We're shopping. When we come back, there is also a barrier in that it's way harder to get back into the activity that you were working on before.
Yeah.
So it's not just the time cost of when you're distracted and you're doing something else. It's then a time cost of needing to come back into the task. And this adds a lot of mental effort. And Professor Mark, who we touched on before, talks about it in the podcast episode we'll link. But it's essentially that you've gone away, you've got distracted. And so when you come back to the activity you were doing, your brain needs to work a lot harder to think about, what was I doing? Where was I up to? And like kind of get back into that flow of the activity. And that then adds all this mental load onto an already busy brain.
Yeah.
It's just we're compounding the problem.
Hectic.
Yeah.
Yes.
There is also the element of multitasking. Now I take some what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, I've got some beef with the word multitasking. I've got some anger towards multitasking. So multitasking is really just our brain switching very quickly. So switching our attention really quickly back and forward between 2 activities. We're not actually completely focused on 2 things at one time. So if you're doing work, now I think about this because if I'm working, late or after hours or whatever, sometimes I like to have a show on. Yeah. To make it slightly less depressing that I'm working on, not when I'm at work. Yeah. So I'll be working on something and I might have a show in the background. Now my brain is not not what's the word I'm looking for again? It's not both focusing on the show and my work. My attention is switching very quickly back and forward between the show and my work, the show and my work.
Yeah.
When we multitask, and I'm quoting for our audio listeners, when we do that, we are essentially making it take longer to do both activities because your attention's going back and forward. It's also multitasking, or this switching back and forth, actually can lead to more stress. And it is also likely to be less quality work because you're divided between two things, which means that you're more likely to make mistakes.
Yes.
So if I am working on this, but then I'm distracted watching the show and I'm back on my work and so forth, you are less likely to have that high quality work of focusing on one thing at a time.
Yeah. This is exactly like before we started recording the podcast today. I was rereading over my notes, and Lauren, you were talking to me, and I was not taking in a word you were saying, and you called me out on it, which is good. You were like, "You're not listening to me, are you?" And I wasn't, because I could not listen to you at the same time as read my notes and take in both sources of information.
Yeah, but people will say that they're multitasking,
they're
and I beg to differ.
Exactly. They're liars.
Harsh. Yeah, harsh, but yes. Yeah.
Another thing to reiterate is that our brain has limits. We cannot work on a task without having a break for a endless period of time.
Yes.
So we need to do things to pause, have a break, and keep us engaged.
Yeah.
So something that might be really helpful is changing the task or having a change of scenery. So if you've been working on a report for an hour, rather than pushing through and working on it for another hour, have a 5-minute break in between the 2-hour period and maybe go sit somewhere else in the office or go for a quick walk, grab a cup of tea, and then come back to the task. Having that break at a point that makes sense is really important as well. So not stopping mid-sentence, but kind of finishing a sentence or finishing a paragraph and at a point that makes sense within the task, finding a pause, changing your scenery, doing something different, maybe having a break is better for us than pushing through and feeling fatigued.
Yes, yes. A strategy I like to do for this, so this is when you're on a task and, like you mentioned, Kira, switching between two tasks is not great for our attention, but we do need, once we've worked on one task for a long time, we do need to switch to something else to kind of reinvigorate us. And that's when those breaks or that change of scenery can be really helpful. But when we find that natural break or a break that makes sense in the activity, a thing I like to do is to write down what I need to do when I come back to the task. So for example, if I'm working on writing a paper and then I've decided, okay, I've hit my attention limit, or it's time for my break, or I need to switch to something else, or maybe it's the end of a work day and I'm like, this is done. I will find a break that makes sense. So maybe that's the end of a sentence. And then just after that, I will write down what the next step is for me so that when I come back, I know what I'm starting with. So for example, I might say you're writing about XYZ next. That's what I've got to do, and I'll highlight it, and that's written into the end of the part that I was up to, so that when I come back, I don't have so much mental effort in thinking, what was I up to last time? Where am I going next? What do I have to do? It kind of takes off that load so that you can just jump back in a lot easier and refocus faster. Or it might be, if you're working in a big project, you put a Post-it note somewhere and you say, I was up to this next step of sending an email to this person. Like it's just priming your brain. That makes us think also about what we can actually do to improve our focus and attention, because we can all feel that is getting trickier. It's harder to stay focused, pay attention, and limit distractions. And that is also impacting our stress levels and our well-being and mental health. So how can we then boost our focus and limit those distractions?
A major technique is simply mindfulness and having that present moment awareness,
Yeah.
being mindful of what we're doing in the here and now. And there's so much research to support this, showing that mindfulness helps boost our focus and boost our awareness. Mindfulness helps us be able to better focus on what we're doing and manage those internal and external distractions. And what I mean by that is those internal distractions might be those thoughts that we might have going on in the back of our head, like what we're going to have for dinner or what we're going to do that evening. But when we're focused at work, we don't want to be thinking about that. We want to be focused on our task.
Yeah.
And those external distractions, maybe you're working in an office environment where there's people walking in and out and there's people talking to each other. But by being mindful and being aware of the present moment, you're better able to focus on the task at hand rather than Jan and Bob chatting in the background. So yes, mindfulness can help boost our focus and boost our awareness. And it's also a really low cost activity. It's not difficult to participate in. Maybe it just means practicing mindfulness in the morning, doing like a little meditation, or being better able to check in with yourself throughout the day and bring your awareness back to the present moment. It's a really good place to start honing your attention in on what's important to you.
Yes. We'll keep harping on about the benefits of mindfulness. Yes. Let's put that down as another episode soon so we can really continue to drill the message home. There's also time in nature, which I know that we both really like and think it's quite a wholesome strategy. So time in nature is highlighted in the research as potentially being beneficial for regulating our attention. And this is kind of time outside in nature. Essentially it's about like seeing, so getting that visual stimuli of nature into our brains. So going out and walking through a park, seeing like a lake or a river, just having time, like I said, touching grass a little bit. That's good for our attention. And it's, I guess, also an element of that is it's giving you that time away. So it's, time away from tech, kind of time away from the busy daily life, and getting time in nature. But it can also still be helpful if you're just being around nature more. So even if you're, going outside, and maybe it is that you're going to work outside a little bit in a park, but just having proximity to nature is helpful for our attention. And then that also is related to time away from tech. So limiting screen time is another factor that is good for our focus and attention. And we've spoken a lot about how tech is bringing in those distractions. So I guess this makes sense, but there is obviously there is an association in the research between increased screen time and poorer attention, but the nature of the relationship is a bit unclear, and I guess this area is somewhere that a lot of the research is still emerging. But we know that greater screen time is associated with poorer mental health and well-being and more stress, and that's particularly related to those kind of negative experiences on tech as well. But if we've got poorer mental health and well-being and more stress, that's obviously worse for our attention.
Definitely.
And so also tech is that big cause of distraction, and a part of that is like all the notifications that we receive from our tech that are constantly trying to pull our attention away. And reducing those notifications, so placing limits on our tech to reduce them, can help with limiting distractions in the day. And this can be something like the work focus mode on an iPhone. So that kind of stops all of those unnecessary distractions in the day. Do you use that?
I don't use that.
Or do you do not disturb or anything? Or no, you're fine.
I'm just not very popular and I don't get many messages throughout the day. I think you're the only one that texts me.
Okay, well, maybe I'll I was going to say I'll stop to limit the distractions, but no, that
We
would
have a
be sad.
podcast to get out.
Yeah. So you can put limits on your tech to help with to help with reducing those distractions.
Yeah.
And really just stopping some of the things coming in when you don't want them to be.
Yes.
Yeah. And something as simple as putting a limit on those notifications can help to reduce the amount of time you're likely to go and divert and click on the thing as well. And so it can be helpful to then have breaks, I guess, having this focus time where you're doing a task and you're not looking at those distractions and you're putting limits on the things that you are kind of accessing, and then you have a moment for a break.
Yes. Speaking of moments for breaks, I know.
Do you want one now?
Yeah, just a mid-episode break, please. I know when I'm working, there's breaks that help reinvigorate me, and then there's breaks that suck my attention away.
Yeah.
So I know if I'm having a busy day at work and I need a brain break, like my brain is in overdrive, I've just had a difficult session, or I'm really kind of like my cognitive capacity has maxed out and I need a break.
Yes.
It's really helpful if I go for a walk or go get a tea. Or for me, I really like playing like New York Times, like connections or Wordle.
Yeah.
They're really helpful. Whereas if my break is scrolling on social media,
Yeah.
that isn't a productive break for me. That
Yeah.
kind of sucks my attention and distracts me. And I lose track of time if I'm kind of scrolling.
Yeah.
So that's taken a bit of time to work out,
Yeah.
but kind of those brain breaks that help reinvigorate you versus those brain breaks that distract you further from your task.
Yeah. And then they're breaks that you come back from and you're probably not better able to focus. Whereas the ones that restore and reinvigorate you, you come back from those breaks better able to focus on the task. Like you've kind of recharged your brain a little bit. And I think something you said there is really important about how, for you, you've worked out that break on Wordle or on connections, which is, time spent on tech.
Yes.
But for you, that works well at re-energizing you. And you can also do it in a manner that is controlled.
Yes.
So you know that for you, you go on there, you do those 2 activities, they finish at a certain time and you can come back.
Yes.
And it's not, like you said, sucking you in like the social media is.
Yeah.
Now, that will look different for every person.
Yeah.
For some people, and particularly for those that are a little bit less impulsive or have less difficulty kind of separating. So I imagine, and I think from knowing you, I can see like you would spend time on that and then be able to kind of separate and come back to your task. But for other people, that might be trickier. So it might be that any tech time becomes too distracting. It might be that they go on Wordle or connections, but then every time that leads to them also clicking onto Instagram or TikTok or going on and online shopping or doing other things. And it's harder to find the separation or the line.
Yeah.
And so then for them, it might be easier to not have tech time during those breaks.
Yeah.
But for other people, it might work really well. So it's very personalized. And I think you've given us a lovely example of how that works for you. Now, I find for me that, because I think I'm probably more on the side of the less self-control than you, I find external time limits and kind of these setting rules or boundaries in my day very helpful for keeping me focused. And one of the things I use is the Pomodoro technique. So for anyone that doesn't know what that is, it's where you have a time duration of work time and then you have a break. So it might be you're working for 45 minutes and then you have a 5-minute break, or it might be 45 minutes work, a 15-minute break. And it just, you can make whatever time frames work best for you. But I like this because during my work time, like when I'm on with my work time, I have kind of set the rule that I can't touch the other distracting things. So I've said, I can't look at my emails. I kind of ban myself in my brain from doing these things. So I can't go on email. I can't switch to another task. I can't check my phone. I leave everything else, and I've set the rule for the next 45 minutes. I am solely focused on this task, and that's all I'm doing. But then when my break time starts, I can do whatever I want, for the 5 minutes or the 15 minutes, whatever my brain desires in the moment. I'll do that. And I try and keep it as a break that I know will kind of reinvigorate my focus. But essentially it's up to me in the moment what I do. And then I come back and I start another one of those blocks of time. And that really helps me to keep my self-control in the moment and keep my focus. This makes me also think about the timing of tasks across our day, because maximizing hard tasks or trying to schedule the hard tasks for your peak focus times is really helpful. So for a lot of people, these peak times of focus across the day are kind of that morning time. So it might be like mid to late morning, and then again around 2 o'clock or so. That's often but it will be different for every person. Just think about for yourself across your day, when is your peak focus time? And then put the hard, high focus, high effort tasks in those times, and try and limit whatever else is put in those blocks of time. And then put the low mental effort tasks in your low focus times. So this is like the 3 to 4 p.m. when you want to fall asleep in the afternoon, that you put your emails then instead of doing your emails first thing in the morning, because maybe you get to work first thing in the morning, and that's actually your peak productive high focus time when your brain is really on, and that's when you want to put your hard things rather than starting the day with emails that maybe don't take so much mental effort, and then you've lost that high focus time to low effort tasks.
So do those cognitive demanding tasks when we're feeling the best.
Absolutely.
And on the flip side to that, it's so much harder to pay attention and to have that sustained focus when we're not feeling our best. So if we consider our self-care activities like getting enough sleep, eating nutritious meals and fueling our body, and making sure we have the energy to take on the day. If we don't have that, it can be really difficult to maintain that sustained attention and that focus throughout the day.
It's important to remember within the context of this whole episode that we are living in a time where we're up against these external forces that are working to grab and hold our attention. So like we said, our attention is profitable to a lot of companies. And so there are a lot of things that are competing for our attention, which do make it harder for us to stay focused. So it's good to remind ourselves as well, particularly if we're being quite harsh on ourselves, that, we can't stay focused and we keep getting distracted, that it isn't just us.
No, it's blame Mark Zuckerberg.
Are we going to get sued? No. I hope not. But we're up against all of these things around, in our environment that are pulling for our attention, and it's not just us. But there are a lot of things, like, I guess, to also empower us in thinking about our focus and attention and distraction. There are a lot of these little things that we can implement to improve our focus and to help reduce that stress and those negative impacts of distraction that can come up. And a few of these things are, thinking about implementing a mindfulness practice. And so, even 2 to 5 minutes a day, I've really enjoyed, especially for the work context, there are these like pre-work mindfulness meditations, or they're like ones that kind of get you into a focused state. And that can help with increasing that flow and that real deep focus in work. And so, they're very brief little meditations you can do even at your desk, like just listening, and they're kind of low, you're not kind of moving around or needing to lay down. You can do them quite inconspicuously as well, but they can set you up into a better focused state for work. Also think about getting in more outdoor time. So getting more time in nature, even when it's chilly like it is in Melbourne at the moment, but seeing the grass and the greenery. And then setting limits on tech and notifications. So putting in some of those notification limits to limit how much these other external forces can also be vying for our attention.
Yeah.
Consider also when your peak focus times are and maximize those. So leave those mundane tasks for when you're more tired and put the tricky, hard things at the time when your brain is the most likely to be focused.
And that brings us to the end of today's episode where we chatted all things attention and focus. Thank you for supporting This Might Help podcast. We're just getting started, and as always, we'd really appreciate any feedback or comments you have about the podcast. So please send us a message at This Might Help podcast on social media.
The video version is on YouTube, as always, and the resources and references from the episode are in the show notes. As always, if you need any further support, please get in touch with a healthcare professional, and further helplines are also always in the show notes.
Catch us next week.
Bye.